Hello everybody, I'm continuing my Star Wars Black Series marathon, and today I'm going to be looking at a slightly older release from a few years ago, and specifically it's one of the special edition releases celebrating the Legacy line, or as anyone who was around in the 1990s would know it, the Expanded Universe. And if you were around in the 90s and you were a Star Wars fan, then you'll know that this was actually a pretty cool and creative time. We had a number of different tie-in novels, computer games, comic books, and of course toys. And one of the comic book series that really stood out at the time was Crimson Empire. In fact, they did 3 separate mini-series based around the character of Carnor Jax. And this series offered an unusual perspective because it was actually coming from the side of the Empire, which is kind of unusual, and it was focusing very much on one of the Imperial guards that we see in Return of the Jedi. And if you've not had the chance to check it out, I thoroughly recommend it. And pleasingly, Hasbro have caught this in the Black Series, and today I'll be looking at Carnor Jax himself. So let's take a look at the packaging, and you will immediately notice that this is slightly different to what we typically get in the Black Series. It is a nice box format. We have this fantastic image at the front here, actually taken from the comic books themselves. This is taken from the first Crimson Empire, one of the key issues there. It's a fantastically, beautifully illustrated image there, and of course it's largely text-free. Now I heartily approve of this because I think this is incredibly displayable, mainly thanks to that fantastic artwork, and I think, yeah, this just looks brilliant. And of course it's largely text free. If we flip it over and look at the side panel, pleasing to see they're actually doing something here. Now it's not fantastic, but at least we have a little bit of a more creative use of this side panel than we typically get in this line. We have an image there of the character, which is great. We have his name, and of course you could stack these up with other characters in the series, and you'll have something that's quite interesting if you decide to put them on side profile on the shelf. And if we look at the reverse of the packaging, okay, yeah, falls down a little bit here. This is a little bit bland, not the most presentable, but hey, it's all about the front of the packaging in this case. And then if we open the front cover, we'll see that obviously on the left hand side we have another comic cover here, fantastic image. We have a little bit of bio there about the character, and then on the right hand side of course we have the typical window display where we can see the figure and his various accessories. So this is a hearty success in my opinion. I think this looks really good, and I really approve of this presentation. And I have to say, first impressions upon opening this figure up is he's hugely impressive. I really love his cape, and we'll dig into that a little bit in a moment, but I think this is a really nice visually looking figure. If we start off by looking at the sculpting, yes, we've seen this before on the previously released Imperial Guard, of course, so this is just obviously carbon copied here, but it is a very nice job. I think it's perfectly sculpted. There's not a lot of detail, but it is nice that there is obviously 2 tones there in terms of the visor. No shading or washes or anything here. I don't think this really needs it in all truth, and I think this looks pretty good just the way it's meant to. It's not particularly special, but I think, you know, it looks pretty much spot on. Now, the sculpting of the armor on the actual main body is a lot more interesting. Of course, we have 2 tones here. We have the red and we have the black, which is quite striking, and I think this looks really quite cool. Of course, this is brand new. This is original sculpting. I don't think we've seen this anywhere else. I think it's bespoke and specific to this character, which is very cool, and I think it looks brilliant actually. If we look at the arms though, I have a little bit of criticism here because again you can see that, yeah, this has just been produced in the base mold plastic, and there's no washes or any kind of detailing here at all, which is a shame. That, you know, the sculpting is fine, but you know, a little bit of a wash over this would have been quite helpful to distinguish it and just make it look a little bit more interesting. As it is, it just kind of all blends into a bit of a sea of red, and it just looks very plastic-like, which is you know, unfortunate. It's worth drawing your attention to his specially crafted and moulded holster there, which I think is pretty cool, quite unique to this character, which is great, and you'll see that his weapon obviously is already attached there. You don't have to do this yourself, which is okay. And again, if we look at his legs there, the shin pads that he's got, obviously completely unique to this character, so a lot of retooling and new sculpting has gone into this figure, which is great. Now I have to admit, my favourite thing about this figure is the cape. I love it when we get cloth capes like this. I think it works an absolute treat, adding all sorts of extra depth and texture, which is marvellous, and I think they've done a particularly special job here because we have the cotton red cape on the outside, and then on the interior we have this marvellous purple lining, which is a very metallic and sort of silky texture to it, which I think is fantastic, and it's big enough to be able to wrap all the way around him, but you can also push it back over his shoulder to allow him to be posed in all sorts of action positions, which is brilliant. Looking at the articulation, and well, no surprises, there's basically zero articulation in the neck or the head because of that helmet. He does have ball joints in the shoulders though, and thankfully those shoulder pads will accommodate that movement, which is really good. Sadly, there is no bicep swivel here at all. There is just a pin swivel at the lower elbow, so of course that lower forearm will rotate all the way around, and it will hinge to about 90 degrees, but this feels a little bit limiting if I'm being completely honest. And then there is another pin swivel at the wrist there, so the handle will rotate all the way around, and of course it will hinge forwards and backwards as well. Now he does seem to have a ball joint in the upper torso, but I wasn't able to get an awful lot out of this beyond a basic swivel moving from side to side. I couldn't really lean him from side to side, and when it comes to bending him forwards and backwards, well, it's a bit limiting to say the least. He doesn't really particularly move a great deal, which is disappointing. Now we've got the ball joints in the hips, of course, the legs will kick out to the side, there's the thigh swivel at the very top there, and the leg of course will kick forwards and backwards without any great hindrance, which is fantastic, and there is a double joint at the knee, so of course that lower leg will kick all the way back, and then we have the pretty standard ankle pivot there, so the foot will hinge forwards and backwards, and of course it will rock from side to side. Accessories wise, he comes with this mini pistol blaster, and he has this rather large double-edged sword thing, which I'm not sure what the name is, apologies. Vibroblade, perhaps? Anyway, he has absolutely no issues holding his blaster in that one hand there, that grip in hand. He can get his fingers onto the trigger, which is great. It is a very small blaster. I think this is pretty accurate to the comic books though, but it does look, yeah, strange in his hand, I gotta be honest. It does seem disconcertingly small actually, and out of proportion. And then we have him with that double-edged sword there, which looks pretty cool. He has no issues holding that in his grip, which is great. It's a shame that we don't actually have any additional hands at all to make this more, perfectly sculpted, but it works absolutely fine. The grip is nice and tight on this, and it looks pretty cool, I've got to say. We can actually see a bit of different colours here. We've got the silver and we've got the black, of course, which is good, but again, it would have been nice to have seen a little bit more in the way of paint apps here and some washes, just to draw out some of the detail there, particularly on the grip. I think would have been, pretty cool. But having said that, there's plenty you can do with this in terms of posing, which makes it a really cool, interesting piece. And of course, I think it's unique, actually. I don't think we've ever seen that recycled anywhere else in the Black series, so a pretty cool weapon indeed. Okay, all in all then, for me, I'm happy to give this figure 4 stars. And it was so close to being 5 stars, because there's so much about this figure that is absolutely brilliant. I really love the sculpting. I love that cape and the effort that's gone into that. I think his accessories are fun and, specific to the character. And yeah, we're seeing an awful lot of special tooling just for this release, which does make it feel special and individual and worth your money. Really, you can see where your money's being spent, which is really nice. But then it's just let down by little things, in my opinion, and just has to lose a star, really, because, yeah, once again, we're not seeing much capsulization in terms of the washes or the paint apps. Just a little bit of a wash on the arms, perhaps on the legs, on some of the accessories there would have just really elevated this, to another level. And then, yeah, the articulation does let him down, and I'm not quite sure why, really. Why he hasn't got a bicep swivel, for example. It's pretty standard stuff, and it's disappointing that he hasn't got something as simple as that. Of course, he is limited in terms of the helmet, so it feels like you've got to make up for it in other areas, and yeah, they've missed an opportunity here. But other than that, I think this is a fantastic figure. If you like the Expanded Universe and you like this comic book run, then I heartily recommend it, because I think it's one of the strongest entries in the line. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.